Good morning, everyone. This is Walter Floriani. We're coming to you live from Oklahoma City from the company Be So In. We're in the middle of a class. We're going to do a demo on the new MDQII. I'm going to turn it over to this point to Mark Garretts. He is our MDQII specialist. He's going to give you a wonderful, wonderful demo. So with that said, Mark, it's yours, brother.
Okay, I hope you can hear me here and out there. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for attending. This is the introduction to our brand new My Decorative Quilter. We're calling it My Decorative Quilter 2. I'm going to go ahead. This is the new icon. This is a great new icon. DJ designed this. Looks like a little quilt block. You'll see a bigger picture of it here when I start up. So we're just going to go ahead and let the software start up here. And it's going to load. This is going to take a little while. It's not too bad. Okay, so when it comes up, you're going to get this screen here. We'll just go over this a little bit. You've got the My Floriani Club. It's a special section for MDQII owners. You would click here to enter it. You've got some things you can do here. We're not going to take a lot of time to go through all these. But down here I've got create a new design, so that's what I'm going to click, create a new design. For those of you in the audience today wondering about MDQ in general and wondering about, I've already got MDQ, how do I get my update? Let's go over that just a little bit. First of all, we're kind of pre-announcing it, pre-launching it today. It's going to be available to the general public sometime in early March. We're hoping by March 1st, which is about a week. You got to give us a couple days leeway on that, but we will get it out as soon as we can. For those of you that have MDQ, the original program, you should have already gotten your invitation to join the Floriani Club and get to the MDQ section. If you haven't done that, you need to do that right away, because that's where your update is going to be delivered to you via software, or via download. So you're going to be able to log into that website. You'll type in your information from your original MDQ. It'll give you a download link and your new serial number, and you'll be able to install the program. And this is what it looks like. For those of you that have FTCU, our Premier Embroidery software product, you'll see it looks very, very similar. In fact, they're based basically on the same program. We've just optimized MDQII for the quilting audience. So let me just take a second and talk to you about what MDQII is all about. What's its philosophy? Why does it exist? What does it do? So basically why it exists is it's a way to take a quilt block and decorate it and embellish it by adding quilting stitches, and by quilting stitches I mean the actual quilting like stippling or textures or other things like that that you would use to hold the various pieces of the quilt together. So you'd hold the quilt sandwich together. Those are the quilting stitches. Open work kind of designs, full embroidery designs. It is designed to take a block either that's built into the software or a block that is pre-existing, so a block you may have already stitched out, or a block that you want to create that's not in the software that maybe you scanned in from a book or a magazine article or some other point like that. You can bring that into the software and you can overlay on the top of that image of the block or the artwork of the block the stitches that you want to eventually stitch out. And it's designed primarily to take those stitches and stitch them out on an embroidery machine. So what we are creating as our output is an embroidery stitch file that will overlay on top of that block and actually create those embellishments, quilting stitches, decors, borders, all those kinds of things that you can do with the software. So it's designed primarily to work a block at a time. It is not designed to work a whole quilt at a time. It doesn't calculate yardage. It doesn't automatically add borders or anything like that. You can do piecing in the hoop with it, but it is not strictly designed to do piecing in the hoop. It will not automatically take a quilt block and create a piece in the hoop design. We have stuff for those functions coming, but they're just not ready yet, so you'll have to stay tuned for those. but this is what MDQ does and why it exists. So we're going to run through some of the features and show you a little bit about how it works and how excited I am to bring this to you today. And for those of you in the audience, the live audience here, about 110 women sitting in front of me here, and like Walter said, usually I'm just in my little room sitting in front of my computer, so it's a little weird doing the webinar live, but they're all here now. We told them all to be quiet so it doesn't make any noise, but there's really a lot of women here. And there's a few guys. I'm sorry about that, guys. You need to get in touch with your feminine side today. All right, so this is the basic interface. It looks pretty much like FTCU, but this is MDQ2. You'll notice some differences. One of the major differences is right up in here where we work with blocks. So let's start out by selecting a block. Now I said that originally this software is designed to work a block at a time, which it is. You can either use a built-in block, and right now we have over 300 built-in blocks in the version that I'm running here. By the time you get your release version, we're hoping to have a lot more blocks, and we'll be adding blocks and blocks and blocks as we go to get to over 2,000 blocks when we're done. Right? So they'll be continually adding blocks to this. But right now we're starting with a basic set of about 300 blocks. There's actually slightly over that. I counted them last night one by one. There's actually 309 in this initial release. So you do that by clicking the select block icon. It comes up with this window. It gives you blocks. They're organized into various categories. So you've got all kinds of things from Dresden plates, crosses, classic blocks, baskets, basic blocks, kaleidoscope blocks, you name it. I'm going to just keep it very, very basic and go to basic blocks, and I'm going to choose my favorite block to play with for these kind of demos, and that's basic block number 21. But right now it's called basic block number 1. So to bring that in, all I got to do is click it. Now I'm going to undo that because I wanted to show you something I forgot to show you. And we've, just like in FTCU, we've got unlimited amounts of undo and redo. And trust me, undo is your friend. So what I'm going to do is click basic block again, because what I wanted to show you was down here at the bottom. We've designed these blocks pretty much at 8-inch blocks. But if that's not the block size you want, you can change the default to select anything you want. So the standards are 4x4, 6x6, 8x8, custom, or the default. Now you can create your own blocks as well. So if you designed it as 6x6, the default means that's how it's going to come in. Okay, so but you can change it to any size you want, either here or after you bring it in. But I'm going to go ahead and bring that in at the default size. All right. One of the things that I like to show people in the software is our ruler and our grid. Now, a lot of people like to work without a grid, and people like to work with a grid. For quilting, I generally turn the grid off, but I wanted to show you one difference between this and FTCU, and that the grid, when you start up the My Decorative Quilter 2, is that it's going to come in inches, and the grid size is set to 1/4 of an inch. So that is very, very useful for quilters. Now, this is a block built in. This block consists of what we call artwork. So there's actually 5 pieces of artwork here. There's my center diamond and these 4 triangles around the edge. And each one of these is a separate piece of artwork. So if I click off, I could click it and click it. Now, what artwork is artwork, you can think of it as the lines that we want to color in between. So when we are working with a block and we want to create a pattern that fills a certain space, like for example, if I want to fill that diamond in the center, I need to be able to tell the software where that diamond is. Now, artwork automatically has that built in because artwork is the outline that tells the software where the outline is. But if we were to bring in an image of a quilt block, which we'll do a little bit later in the demo, those lines don't exist, so we have to create them. And we're going to show you how simple that is to do a little bit later in the demo. But one of the things I want to mention is that in FTCU, if you're used to that, or in the old MDQ, if you were used to that, we had some icons that we call convert to icons, and they're down along the bottom. So in MDQ, for example, if I wanted to convert this to a fill stitch, say a textured fill stitch, I would click it to select the artwork, and then down along my bottom I have my one-click icons, those convert to icons, and I would simply click that to convert to the texture. And it would take that artwork and it would literally convert that artwork into stitches. Now what's important to know about that is that when that happens, the actual artwork would disappear because the stitches would replace the artwork. But in MDQ, it works a little differently. In fact, we're not going to call them convert to, we're going to call these copy to. So if you look over here in my sequence view, you can see here's the outline of that diamond-shaped artwork. So this tells me what I have selected. This little blue box here is telling me that's what's selected. So watch what happens if I convert to an auto stipple here. If I click auto stippling, it's going to come in and it is going to add on top of here, and let me zoom in so you can see that. Let me turn it to 3D. That's actually looking a little tight. Let me change the density here to a 6. Drop my box down and click my apply. That's still a little hard to see. Let me change the thread color to make it easy to see. Did that work? No, I need to select it. Hold on. There we go. I need to click off it. That was the problem. Okay, so there's my stippling. Okay, so you can see that it filled in the artwork. So it created in white thread down here this stippling pattern. But if we scroll back up to the top, this artwork is still here. Okay, so it didn't delete it. Now, why is that cool? That is cool because of a new function we have in here called fabric. I can click right here and I can actually pick a fabric to put behind it. So let me just click, for example, well, let me actually show you one cool thing. If you don't have a fabric in here in one of the defaults that we've given you, you want to add your own fabric, you can click right here, add a fabric. And on my desktop, I know I have a scan I did of a batik fabric, and it is right here, the sample fabric.jpg. So I'm going to bring that scan in, and that's going to add it to my palette. If I scroll down all the way to the bottom here, you can hear a sample fabric that I just added. If I click OK, that's going to put that fabric design in that block.
That is amazing, because that means that all of them with all these boxes full of materials at home, they can scan those images of that material in that they want to utilize. That's incredible. That is an incredible feature.
Let me change the color of that stippling so you can see it better over the top of that fabric. Now I'm going to change it to a contrasting color. I'm going to change it to black. Now you'd probably never stipple in black, but I want you to be able to see that on top of that fabric. So that gives you an idea of what's cool about it. Now, what if I wanted to put a border around this? Let's say I wanted to put a satin stitch border around that. I come back and still click this artwork, and I can put a steel stitch border around that artwork. And now I've got, what happened to it? Oh, it made it in green, so I can't see it. Let me change it to black. Okay, so now I've got that black satin stitch, steel stitch border going around it, and I didn't have to do any copy and pasting because my original artwork is still there. And what would have happened if I'd converted that artwork into that steel stitch or that stipple stitch is the fabric would have disappeared. So this allows me to keep that fabric image still behind it. So that's a really, really cool feature. So let me actually undo and get rid of that that steel stitch because I probably don't want that there. But this gives you an idea, for example, of the stipple stitch. Now let me just talk about the stipple stitch for a second. If you are used to using the stippling in our old MDQ software, it was okay, but it had the problem of running into the edge. It used to run right into the edge, and it would just stop, and it would travel along the edge. The stitch would travel right along the edge. It created the illusion that we had also put a border on the block, which looked terrible. The new software has a great stipple. And you can see that it automatically tried to detect where the edge is and turn as much as possible before it got to the edge. So it didn't create that border effect. And this is a really, really cool advancement in our new MDQII. Let's just show you a couple other things we can do with it. Let's say I don't want to stipple. Let's say, for example, I wanted to fill that area with a texture. I can click here, and I'm going to fill that with a texture fill. So it's actually going to convert, in this case, those stitches to a different stitch type, because I don't want to have stitches on top of stitches. So in this case, it actually worked as a convert to. And there's my default stipple value here. And you can see that I've got literally hundreds of stipple values to choose from. So if I want a different shape in there, like let's say I want this shape, let's pick 260. I just have to click it and click apply. And I've got that shape. Now that's a little tight, but I can change my pattern size. So let me actually just double it. Let me go up to a pattern size of 30. So I'm just going to type in 30 and click apply. And now I've got probably a better pattern size in there. Now I can further do things with this. If I don't like the fact that it's running straight across like that, if I want to angle it to maybe run this way, I can click my shape tool. When I do that, I've got an inclination line here. So I can simply change the points on that line to run, say, across this way. And when I unclick and right-click, now I've got my pattern running the other way. So I can virtually rotate that pattern within here any way I want to. Now, here's another really cool thing about our new patterns. It's not a stitch size anymore. It's now actually a pattern size. So this actually controls the pattern, but you notice I also have stitch length. So it's actually going to stitch this pattern, but it's going to do it in 2.5 millimeter stitches. It's not going to try and take a big stitch across all these endpoints. So I can control the stitch length independent of my pattern size. So that is really, really cool. Let me go on with something else I want to show you. And we've done stippling, so I'm going to skip over that icon. Down here we have something called advanced stippling. Now this works in a similar manner to the texture fills, but they're just different kind of fills. Okay? So we've got more stipple-oriented fills. So there's one pattern, and look at all of these hundreds of different stipple fills I have to choose from. I've got what? Almost 400 stipple fills. Well, we started at 1. Yeah, so almost 400 stipple fills to choose from. Let's just take something that's a little more open like this one and click apply, and I've got my stipples running across there like that. And again, I've got control over my pattern size, so let's maybe make it a little bit bigger, go up to a pattern size of 20, and now I've got that in there. Again, I've still got my angle line, and it kept my angle line from before. So this one, let me run it just straight across by moving those endpoints. Right-click to tell it I'm done, and now I've got my stipple pattern running the other way. So the possibilities that you can do with these functions are almost endless, limitless. You can exercise your creativity, and here's the really, really cool part. You can audition these stitches on top of your quilt block over and over and over again without ever having to commit a stitch to fabric. You can audition these stitches until you get it looking exactly the way you want before you put it in the hoop and embroider it. Now I said put it in the hoop, but I also want to mention at this point that we also support robotic long arm quilters. We support a ton of different long arm quilt formats, and for the first time in MDQII, we're now also supporting the Statler stitch format QLI. So that's in there as well, and that's brand new as well. So lots of different things you can do with just those functions. Let me move on and show you a couple other things. For this time, I'm going to select my outside triangles. So I'm going to go back to my normal select tool, and I'm going to select all of them. You can't see what I'm doing, those of you at home. Even those of you here can't see my fingers. I'm holding down Control and selecting all 4 outline triangles. All right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you something called contour quilting. If I select contour quilting, that's going to take all of those and it's going to make a contour all the way around. Now that's a little tight, Let me change my density up to about a 4. Let's go to a 5 and click apply. And now I've got a little bit better contour in there. So you can see I've got these contour stitches. And what a contour stitch does is it takes the outline of my block and it contours them. Since I wanted to do all 4 corners the same, I was able to apply that in the single click by doing all 4 corners simply by selecting them all. Let me show you one other cool function, and that is our shape echo. Shape echo allows you to pick a shape, like for example a circle, and it will actually echo it all the way around the circle. Now, it's taking the center point of this triangle as being right here because it actually draws a square. But if I wanted to create an effect where this circle started here in the center, all I've got to do is come to a block, grab my center point, and move it down here into the center of my block. Okay? And I can do that with this one. So if I do it with all 4, I have got a shape that looks like the circle started virtually in the center and went all the way around. So you can change the center point of these shape fills to get all different kinds of effects. So that's also a really, really cool function. And let me just show you something else. I'm going to grab a new design window because I want to show you some of the applique functions. Right here is a brand new icon called Custom Shapes. If you click this icon, you're going to get all these predefined shapes. And this is what we're starting out with right now. And we're going to be adding more shapes all the time. Let me just pick this bird right here, and that brings in a shape. Now this is artwork. So that again means the outlines. This will not stitch until we make it into stitches. If I wanted to say make an applique out of this bird, I can do that with a single click. All I need to do is come right here and click the applique button, and now I've created an applique. And I've not just simply created a simple applique, a simple steel stitch. If I look at my sequence view here, I have actually created 4 different stitch lines, or 3 different stitch lines in this case. So I've done in my deep pink is my placement line. This would allow me to place my fabric down. Here is my tack down line, and finally here is the steel stitch going around the edge. If I use my slow redraw here to move along, you can see that the way this would actually stitch out is it would stitch out my placement line. And because now I have a color change, it's going to stop the machine automatically for me, allow me to place my fabric down. Then it's going to go ahead and stitch out my tack down line, and that's just a little bit inside my placement line to tack the fabric down. And it's going to stop the machine again to allow me to take the hoop out, get my applique scissors from my wonderful Walter Floriani toolkit, and cut that fabric. And then when I start the machine up again, it's now going to stitch out my steel stitch around the edge. Okay? But I'm not limited to a steel stitch. If I want to change it from a satin, I can change it to a blanket stitch with a single click. So now I've got a blanket stitch. And again, if I want to change to a motif stitch, I can do that as well. So now I've got a motif stitch instead. But let's go back to that satin stitch. Look what I have right here. I've got another fabric. So I can click here. I can pick a fabric. So let's go back and pick that sample fabric that I brought in. It's way down at the bottom here. That sample fabric, I can click OK. And you can see now I can preview what my applique is exactly going to look like on that. I could also, by the way, using the backdrop command right here, I can actually, oh, this one doesn't have fabric for a background. Okay, we're going to add that. Trust me, you'll be able to put a fabric background in here. But if I had a quilt block, if we had a quilt block back here that I was working over the top of, I could change that quilt block background to a different fabric, and then I could preview what this applique was going to look like right on top of my existing quilt block. And by the way, should you want to use our apple stitch material, you can click one click and get an apple stitch design. And you can see in here, I've got this extra trapping stitch that you would need for doing the apple stitch. And finally, if I want to, I can go back to artwork. Or I could change to a run stitch, so I can just have a run stitch to make this bird if I wanted. I can make a motif run, or I can actually make just a steel stitch, which is a satin stitch, all the way around. If I go back to my run stitch, I can change my run stitch from a single run to a double run to a motif and to something that's unique in our software in MDQII called Crazy Quilting. And when I do that, if I select Crazy Quilting, it allows me to come in and select any of these authentic heirloom Crazy Quilt stitches. Now, that's different than Crazy Quilt piecing. These stitches actually came from Kay Brooks's great-great-grandmother's quilt, and we digitized them and put them in. So, for example, if I wanted to make that outline in, say, this Crazy Quilt pattern, I would select that pattern, I would click Apply, and it would create that Crazy Quilt pattern all the way around. Okay? Now you're still seeing the artwork there, so it looks a little strange. But if I hide the artwork here by clicking that, that's what my Crazy Quilt stitch would look like going all the way around the bird. So I've got lots of different things I can do here. I'm going to actually delete this bird because I want to talk a little bit more about Crazy Quilting. Crazy Quilting is applied the way I showed you there, but you can also bring it in a couple of different ways. By clicking this Crazy Quilt icon up here, you have two different options. This is inputting a Crazy Quilting line, and this is inputting a Crazy Quilting manually. So this is a stitch at a time. So let me show you the line first. And this one you do simply by clicking on your outline. So you would click your lines, and when you're done, you would right-click, and it would create that Crazy Quilt stitch. Let me show you what that would look like. Let me undo again if we wanted to do it on top of a block. Let me bring in a new block. Let me go back to that basic block because it's easy to show you what I'm talking about. All right. Let's say I wanted to outline this block right here in Crazy Quilting, but I wanted to do it manually instead of using the artwork. I would come here. I would select my Crazy Quilt. I'd select the down arrow, do the Crazy Quilting line, and I would simply click around my border, okay, just like this. Come up here to end it. I'd right-click to say I'm done, and I didn't draw that last one very straight, but that would give you the idea. That would put my Crazy Quilting in. Let me zoom in so you can see what I've done. I put that Crazy Quilt stitch line right along the edge of that border, so that allows me to manually do it. Now, if I want to do it differently, if I want to do it a stitch at a time, I would simply come here and select my manual, and then what I've got attached here, and I'm going to do it over here so you can see, what I've got attached here is my Crazy Quilt stitches. So I can click and drag my mouse, and I'm putting in a stitch line at a time. Okay? So I can do this, and I'm purposefully making them a little bit random size and orientation. Give it a stitch. Do it precisely because I might be experiencing network difficulties. Are you still hearing me okay, DJ? DJ? Yes, okay. So we're going to ignore that error. I don't know if you could see that at home, but they could see it. That allows you to put them in either with that stitched look like I just did by putting them kind of random orientation, random sizes, or you can do it a line at a time like I've shown you, or you can just shape the last two do three stitch identical to the one in front of it. I've got this thing. Okay, let me just get here. Those of you at home can't see this. Those of you in the audience can see I have this big window over my stuff here from the conferencing software. Okay?
Now, so, Mark, that ability to put them in, though, randomly like that, actually is intended to give it the ability to look as if it was done by hand, okay? The idea with this was that quilters, to me, are very serious people, okay? You take your project serious, and if you look at hand quilted, when we looked at Kay's great-grandmother's quilt, there was a little bit of a differential from, let's say, motif to motif. as she worked her way along a line, one would be a little smaller than the one next to it, per se. That ability to put it in manually basically gives you the effect as if it was done one stitch at a time by hand. That was the intent, and that's what's taking place. That was great. Thank you for that.
All right. So let's move on to some of the other cool things that are built in. One of my favorite things are these embellishments. And that is done with this icon right here. So if I click that, it allows me to take a predefined shape and bring it into the software. So let's just stay with birds. Since we're doing birds, let's do this bird. Okay, so that brings in an artwork shape of a bird and stitches. So I've got two elements here. I've got artwork which surrounds it. That's an outline. And I've got, let me just change the thread color here so you can see that. Let me change to a light color so you can see it on top. And in fact, let me go to 3D so you can see that. Actually, that didn't help very much. Okay, we'll stay there. I'll zoom in just a little bit so you can see. So what I've got going on here is I've got stitches in the center here, and I've also got artwork. So I've got them both the same color right now. Here's my stitches. I can change my stitches to any of my stitch types. So if I want a heavier look, I might, for example, select a bean, and I can change my bean repeats anywhere from 3 to 11. So let me just do a 5 and click apply, and that's going to give me a heavier stitch look. But here's what's really cool about it. And I can resize this, by the way, anywhere I want to. So let me just resize this a little bit. Make it a little bit bigger for this block. Oh, I didn't do the whole thing. Hold on. Undo is your friend. I'm going to do both of them. All right, it's not letting, oh, I'm pressing the wrong key. That's why. Okay, Control. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and resize both my artwork outline and my stitches at the same time to be a little bit bigger. In fact, let's rotate this bird to look a little bit better in my block here. Okay, and let me zoom out so you can see what I've done. Okay, so I've got my bird in here, and I'm going to show you a really cool feature. Now, if I wanted to stipple around this bird, and I simply selected my outside piece here, and I, for example, click Stippling, okay, it's going to put Stippling in, and it's going to put it right over the top of my bird. That looks horrible. I'm going to undo that, okay, because I'm going to show you a really cool feature built into MDQII. I'm going to select the outline around the bird. And then I'm also, at the same time, going to hold down my Control key and select the outside block, or piece. So I've got the purple piece, and I've got the outline of the bird. When I do that, this icon right here, my Combine icon, lights up. And watch what happens when I click it. When I click that icon, it is actually, you can't see it right now, but it actually knocked out the background. If I were to turn on the fill again and click Apply, you would see that what I've got now is I've got the background knocked out. So now, if I were to apply stippling, what you would see is, let me turn off the fill. Where's my block? Here. I'm going to turn off the fill so you can see the stipple stitches. Okay, so what I've got, oh, bad color. Let me change the color to something that's more contrast. Okay, so now you can see it's automatically filled in that stippling without going around the bird, and that's huge. And it's not just stippling. If I wanted to do this with, say, a shape echo, like let me pick this curved diamond here, that kind of goes with this block. I could do that. That's a little tight. Let me change the density to, say, a 20 and click Apply. And so now I've got that background stitching, but not going through my embellishment. You can also do this with any embroidery design that you bring in. Now, the embellishments have built-in outlines, so you don't have to worry about that. But if you have an embroidery design that does not have a built-in outline, we have this Create Outline tool here that would actually allow you to manually or automatically trace around the outside of that embroidery, and so you wouldn't stipple or embellish through it. So that's really, really cool. Let's see, what's our time doing? We've got a few more minutes here. What else is cool in here? We've got text built in. We've got 50 of the top fonts from FTCU built into this program. They're really, really cool fonts. They are fonts that we have chosen specifically that we think quilters will like to use on their quilts. So we've got fonts that are decorative fonts, but we also have some really tiny run stitch fonts that allow you to make really great quilt labels. And speaking of quilt labels, I want to show you one cool thing that I really like about the program. I'm going to get a new screen, and that's our borders. We have a ton of borders built in, and we'll be adding more. So to create a quilt label, for example, you could select any of our borders that are already defined. Like, let's pick, oh, I don't know, where's a good one? Let's pick this one. I don't know what this one looks like, but that would bring in that border, and we could put our quilt label right in here. Now, if we don't like the fact that this is this way, we say we want it horizontal, I've got my rotate icons. So I can rotate this 45 degrees at a time per click, so that allows me to just set it up that way, and then I could come in and type my text in here. So that would make a really cool quilt label, but you can also apply this to a standard quilt block. So you could put a border around the quilt block or anything you want to do. Now, one of the things that I mentioned earlier was that MDQII was designed to work a block at a time. And it works with a block at a time, either from a built-in block, as we've been doing. You can draw your own blocks using the artwork tools. Or, like I said, you can scan in a block and work with that. So let's just go to that right now. Let me grab another new piece of paper so we can bring in our block. And we do that right here with our backdrop tool. And if you're used to the backdrop tool in FTCU, it works identically. So this allows us to bring in an image. Okay? So this image is actually, I need to get to where my images are. Give me 1 second here. My backdrops. Okay, here we go. So an image is not artwork. Artwork, remember, is the lines that allows us to color in between. An image is just simply a picture. So it would be what we call a bitmap file. It would be a JPEG, a GIF, a BMP, a PNG. Just about any of those image formats work. And I'm going to use this 4-star image right here. This happens to be a JPEG. And when I bring that in, it brings it in. Now, I scanned this block, but you can notice that I didn't scan it very well. It's cockeyed. Now, when you go to embellish on top of this block that I've already pieced, I better have this block lined up perfectly in the software. And further than that, it better be the exact size in the software as it really is. Because if it's not, when I go to hoop this up, and I try to stitch over the top, nothing is going to line up. And if your camera or your scanner introduces size errors, which they tend to do, you need a mechanism not only to straighten this out, but to get it to the right size. So let's show you the tools that we've given you to do that. And those two tools are Define Scale and Define Horizon. We're going to do Define Horizon first. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to right-click on this backdrop, and I'm going to select Define Horizon. And I get this cursor that looks like a little cockeyed square there to tell me what I'm doing, remind me what I'm doing. And what this does is it allows me to draw a horizontal line anywhere in the design that I know should be horizontal. So in this quilt, the easiest thing is to use the top of the block, because I know that's supposed to be perfectly horizontal. So what you do is you start, say, at the edge, and you click and drag. Now, the longer the line you draw, the more accurate it is. So I can make this line go anywhere, but I'm going to line it up right along the edge of my quilt block. And when I let off the mouse, boom, it's automatically going to rotate it to the perfect horizontal alignment. So now it's perfectly horizontal. So let's deal with the size next. If we look over here at my backdrop and my properties, you can see that the width of my quilt block is 9.07. Now I happen to know that this is actually an 8-inch block. If I were to measure this on the screen, I would see that it really is 8 inches across. But why is this telling me it's 9.07? because this image has this white space around it that I also happen to scan, and I didn't crop it very well in my image software. So what we've given you is a way to take, no matter what your image is, to take your image, if you know the dimension of any part of it, you can measure that dimension, and it will tell you what it thinks it is. You can type in what it ought to be, and it will scale it for you automatically. So let's say, for example, this came in as an 8-inch block, but it really should have been 10. What I do is I right-click it, and I click my Define Scale. And this allows me to draw, again, a horizontal line anywhere across it that I know the dimension of. Now, this time I need to be pretty precise. So I'm going to get as close as I can to the edge. And so, like I said, I know that when I stitched this out and I measured it and I cut it with my rotary cutter, this was 10 inches. So I'm going to click and drag across to my other side here. And when I let off, it's going to come up and say, it's 8 image. But I want it to be 10. So it's saying it's 8. It's putting 8 in the box here automatically. If I put in 10 and click OK, it's automatically going to scale that image to now match my quilt block exactly. So now my backdrop is perfect. All right? If I wanted to now, for example, put some crazy quilting stitches in to this, I could go into my line mode. Okay? So I put in a line, and let's say I wanted to put some crazy quilting right down here. I could come here and click here. I could come and click here. And when I right-click to say I'm done, it's going to put those stitches in. Now, obviously picked a color you can't see, so I'm going to change that. I need to select those stitches. I'm going to change them to a light blue so you can see them. Let me change my stitch length to be a lot bigger, to 6, so you can see them. If I click off, you can see now I've got my crazy quilting stitches here along that line. So I can see it on top of my quilt block. Okay? Now when I aligned this up in my hoop, those crazy quilting stitches would be right in the right place. Let me get rid of those crazy quilt stitches because I'm going to show you something else. Now, what if I wanted to stipple in, say, this triangle right here? What if I wanted to put stippling in here? Now, remember, this is a picture. It's not artwork. So if I want to stipple, I need something to tell it where to color in between the lines. I don't have those lines yet, so I need to draw them in. I do that right here with my artwork tool. It's my line tool. It's pretty simple. All I need to do is start in the corner here, click, make a line here, click, come here, click, and come here and click, and right-click to say I'm done. And now I've got artwork. Again, let me pick a color. Let's say I want to do it in yellow to match this yellow over here. I'm going to come down here to my thread finder. I'm going to click that. I'm going to type in the word yellow. If I can spell yellow, which I can. Okay, oh, come on. Yellow, click find, and there's some yellows. So this is also a new feature of the software. If I click this to make that design yellow, so I click it, now that's yellow, but it's still my outline. Once I turn this into stitches, like let's say I want to stipple that, if I create stitches out of that and click off it so you can see, oh, it didn't keep the yellow. Hold on. Made it red. Let me just find my yellow again. Okay, I'm going to select my stitches. Oh, I had to do that first. Hold on. Okay, you see all this I'm going through? I'm going to stop right now because I'm going to show you an actual cool feature. Every time I click a color, it's going to slide this color palette around, so I have to find my color again. But here's a brand new feature. We've got this design colors. This just came out. This is now in the new FTCU builds, and it's now in MDQII. It's only got thread up in here right now, and that thread happens to be that deep pink. But if I know I want to use this color yellow over in my design, but I'm not ready to assign thread to it yet, I can right-click down here and say add it to the design palette. Now that yellow is going to stick in here. All right. So now to change it, all I got to do is click that. And that's a really cool feature. So I can build my design palette of colors that I want to and not have to keep finding them. I can find them all at once, move them up here, and then I can use them. So that's actually pretty tight stippling. Let me change the density to, say, a 6. Click Apply. And, oops, I didn't click Apply. I clicked the wrong place. Double click so you can see it. Okay, so now I've got my stippling there. Made it a little bit bigger, but watch what happens. I can simply resize it to fit my block. I need to do the bottom a little bit. Bring it in. Okay, so now I've got it in there. Now that was the manual way to do it, one edge at a time. If I go back, I'll show you a better way to do it. This is with my transform. I can say reduce the size to 90% and click Apply, and it's going to bring all the edges in for me. Okay. So a lot of times you draw those lines right along the edge of the block because it's easy to see, but you don't want your stitching to go right out to the edge of the block. So using that percentage transform down is a way to bring it in automatically, all kind of proportionally. So it's pretty cool. If I click off, you can see what happened there. Right? So that's how you would work with existing artwork. All right. Now here's the cool thing. If I wanted to make this stipple go over here, in fact, let me make it even a little bit smaller. Let me go down 90% again. Okay, so now I brought it in, so it's not quite on the border as much. Now, here's the cool thing. If I wanted to repeat this here, 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 and here, normally what I would have to do is draw that artwork over and over and over again. But remember that most quilt blocks have a lot of symmetrical pieces. And if you're a really good piecer, all you need to do is select this and make a copy of it, and then paste it, and then flip it horizontal using my flip horizontal and move it over into here. Okay? And then I can select both of these, and I can make a copy, make a paste of it to get another copy, flip them vertical this time, and now I can bring them down and put them in here. Now, if you're a really bad piecer like I am, you might have to draw each triangle separately, which is what I would have to do to get it to fit. But we give you the option of doing that. So once you've done one, doing the rest of them for most quilt blocks is really, really easy. Right? So it's pretty cool. Now, this is a scan of actual fabric. So I have to draw these lines in manually. But if you had a scan of solid color, like you might get from a quilt pattern out of a book, you don't need to draw it even if you don't have artwork, because you can use this magic needle tool right here to create the outline automatically. If I did it with this right now, it would mess up because it would try to create an outline around all these variations in the fabric color. But if you have a solid color, a single click with the magic needle would have traced that perfectly. All right? So I'm very, very excited about all the things that MDQ can do. I want to show you couple more things with the time we have left, and that's our built-in decors, and then we're going to go ahead and finish up. I've got built-in decors, which are all kinds of shapes, and we're going to be adding to this library a lot. So by simply clicking one of these, you can bring this in. So let's pick something that would go with this quilt. Oh, let's just bring in a butterfly, the heck with it. So that brings in a butterfly. It's going to bring it in kind of tiny for this quilt block, but since it is Floriani-based software, we can resize this pretty much anywhere we want without having to do anything special. We can put that decor right in the middle of our quilt block there, okay, or anywhere we want. You can also bring in any stitch file that you have. So any embroidery that you have, you can load in here and manipulate like this in your quilt block. Any WAF file, that's our internal format, you can bring that in as well. So all of this. If you happen to own FTCU, the file formats between MDQ2 and FTCU are compatible. So you can, by using a combination of those things, really take your quilting to the very, very next level, because you can do things in FTCU that you can't do in MDQ, and likewise you can do things in MDQ2 that you can't do in FTCU. But if you have both, you really have the best of both worlds, and you can bring the files back and forth at will between the two programs and really take your quilt blocks to the very, very next level. So I think that's about all we have time for today. There's a lot more that MDQ2 does. I want to remind everybody that we do an MDQ2 webinar every month. We do a project of the month. Our next one is coming up on March 3rd. So if you haven't signed up for that, and check the Floriani website for the calendars to see those webinars. We do a project every month. Next month, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're not going to do a completed project. We're actually going to do some techniques and a reintroduction of MDQ2 for you, and to highlight the differences between MDQ and MDQ2. So it's going to be a little bit different for March, but you'll learn a lot of fun techniques. We're going to do a lot of cool stuff with some appliques and show you how the new features work with appliques. And we are also then going to pick up in April with a brand new series of projects. We're going to do kind of a block of the month thing. We're going to do 6 consecutive blocks. Each block is going to use a different set of techniques, and when you're done, we're finally going to show you how to assemble all those blocks into a coherent quilt. So it's going to be a cool next 7 months as we do the projects for MDQ2, and those are all free for people who own MDQ2. And Walt, do you have anything you want to close with?
You know what, Mark? First of all, that was a phenomenal webinar. For those of you out there who have been watching this, doing this live in front of an audience is not a simple thing to do. I just want to give you a hand, Mark. I think you did a great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have so tried to make the software, and as you saw with that bottom line, just kind of click and go. We think we've simplified the process once again. We hope you all have enjoyed this presentation. And from all of us here in Oklahoma City and from BSON, hugs and stitches to you all. Thank you all for attending, and thank you all for watching here in the audience. Have a great day, folks.